So here on the table I have my two scanning setups. The first one is a Plustek 135 scanner and the second one is my Intrepid camera enlarger in the scanning mode. I will use the micro lens for my Fujifilm, which I'm filming with at the moment, and these two setups now my main primary source of the conversions for the negatives, and I just need to select which workflow I like the most. I talked with Lucas from the Filmomat and he actually agreed to support me in my endeavors because I really like the approach what the Lucas have with the Smartconvert app, and these apps actually allows you to constantly work with the scanning and converting at the same time. And additionally, what I like about this app that you have more or less the same setup what you have with the darkroom printing or with the scanning with the professional scanners in a lab. And these two both options, this is a kind of a main thing what I really like about this app. You don't need a Lightroom, it's simplicity and it have a hotkeys, and additionally it's really fast. And in the same time, if you talk about the scanner, you can make a hot folder and you can import the files from the hot folder and make a conversions on the fly. I will scan one negative strip, basically my classic way to scan my negatives, to post them on the internet and store them in my storage. And we will try different methods of the conversions, different approaches and different app. And in this video, I will try to make it a little bit more compact and do not discuss a lot of details and a lot of variations. And this is actually my point of this video, that in 2025, each type of conversion software, conversion app, it's exactly the same as a different scanners or Frontier or Fujifilm scanner. It creates a little bit different look and a little bit different process and workflow. And you need to just think about that as a creative instrument, and you need to select one which you like, and probably you cannot find the best one. You can only find the best one for you, and that's it what you need to think about. Here in the app, you have several options what you can choose from, and you can scan as a negative or the positive. So I prefer to scan as a positive and not like a negative, just because I'm using different types of software to make the final conversion, but it's up to you. But we will do both. I will scan with the negative and I will scan with the positive, and we will compare basically raw results from two different conversions. The main difference there, in this scanner app, now you have a 48 bits, so it's a little bit better than usual scanners can do. And here it's only 360 dpi, but in my case, I think it's overkill and it will take quite a lot of time anyway. And also, if you go in the preference here, you have the options of the auto exposure and the different profiles and things like that. The app still works on the new Max, but in my case, I'm sometimes prefer to turn off auto exposure off. So I will basically make the scans with the auto exposure and without, and we will see the comparison later. So when everything is ready, you just press the scan button, and from the scan button you will see that it starts scanning and creating a lot of noise. This is only downside of the scanner. The motor there creates a lot of noise, but it's also not a bad thing, only if you have really loud room that I have here in Airbnb. After scan finished, you have the window with the full scans here. You actually can edit them, export them, but we will do nothing. They at the moment saved, and I will continue with scanning with the same option, but with the preference of turning off exposure, and also press scan and repeat exactly the same process. In this case, I don't need to unplug and plug back the film holder, so you can rescan multiple times. As you can see in a folder of scan, I have files in a TIFF format. They quite heavy, which I don't like. It's 100 megabytes per file, but you can convert them to DNG or do something else. And now the scanner will finish the work and we will see how the files will pop up in this folder. And in the next step, it will be key feature for us, because in this step, I will connect to this folder the Smartconvert app. And you see, I am not touching the film at the moment, it's scanning. I can work and convert the negatives, but the scanner actually is scanning, and I can double process it and do everything in the same time. I can load it and start converting. When converting is finished, I can convert next one, and so on and so forth. So it's more flow in this process. And if you need to scan 5 or 10 different types of film, I think it's useful and really helpful thing. First of all, the app itself have a kind of a minimalistic design, which I really like. The important features, what I found here, this is you can find in help, and it's keyboard shortcuts. And this is the shortcuts which you can use to edit your photos and actually increase, decrease the magenta, yellow, and cyan channel, increase and decrease density, and basically do a lot of things like mirroring and stuff like that, which I really like, and we will use them now in these conversions. So let's start with just simply pulling the files from the folder and see if everything works fine. First of all, I will select all the TIFF files and all the RAW files and see if it will just work from the Fujifilm RAW or not really, and what will happen and how long the conversion will take place. This is the latest version, and Lucas just released it basically a few hours ago when I'm recording this video, so I just updated and never used it before. Let's see if this workflow will work and looks better than what I used before. So once again, as you can see, it took quite like basically none in terms of time. I can use any type of files. It was TIFFs already converted. It was files already, you see them here, already converted to the positives. So let's start with the files. This is a auto exposure, and let's pull up the keyboard shortcuts. I want to check how to rotate the file. So rotate is this buttons on the Mac. So I will just rotate the file, and if I press up, I can increase density and can decrease density, and also I can do the same with the contrast. First of all, I can say that the file itself looks fine and clean even now. I don't really see any huge problems with the color. It's punchy and dense, and in the same time, I really see the good dynamic range. Honestly, you can edit something and you can change some parameters, and it's quite nice and easy. But what I see from the beginning, that the automatic color conversion works really fine. And if I press enter, it will be a next picture. I can easily rotate that picture, and I also can use the white balance just pointing on the objects, and it will automatically recalibrate the white balance. So it's quite intuitive, and at least for the starting point, I think it's really great feature here. I will quickly edit these files, and we will make a comparison a little bit later with the Negative Lab and the Lightroom, and I will also pull up all the files in the Lightroom, and we will just compare how it works and how it looks like. For example, for this particular photo, as you can see, I have the borders because it was not perfectly aligned in the scanner. So I will just curious if I can make auto crop and it will work. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work. It doesn't really pick up this one small corner. But anyway, you have a crop button, so you can easily change the cropping ratio here without any problems. Just press apply and you have your picture. And I honestly remember this picture what I printed before, and here on a scan it looks quite bad, and I think this is exact point where the auto exposure feature doesn't really work well, and you have the absolute strangely looking colors, especially in the shadows. And downside of the software, what I see now, it's a little bit more for fast edit and balancing out. It's not the app which you're using for the final look on the image, but it gives you amazing base which you can edit later in any type of software you like. Auto exposure, in my case, giving this type of errors all the time. As you can see here, almost zero ability to recover this image. So it's there, but your balance of shadows is off, and you cannot really change it the same way as this image. So it looks different, and dynamic range is kind of a different, and you have two different looking pictures, and the only one thing what I change is auto exposure on the scanner. So as you can see, I'm quite off in all the parameters, and you can easily get lost with the settings there if you're just trying to dig them back and forward, and it's quite hard to create the proper color balance here. So if you don't really want to do anything with the picture, you can just press skip, and you can just skip the images which you don't really like or don't really want to edit. And now let's talk about the scans on Intrepid Camera Enlarger. And here, as you can see, I have the frame. And first of all, in general, it looks great, and I don't really even want to crop that. But the purpose of the video is just to compare, so I will crop the image itself and I will have the final image looking exactly the same. So let's start with the button auto crop and see how it works. As you can see, it cropped quite well, and here you have a settings. You can adjust the offsets of the auto crop, and I will just put the 2 everywhere because it's not enough, maybe even 2.5, and with the 2.5 I think it should work perfectly well. Yes, as you can see, I'm lacking a little bit of the contrast on the image, so I will just put back the contrast, play with the density. But in terms of color, everything looks fine, and only one thing what I need to do is just make a mirror on the image, and the image will be looking exactly the same as image what I have before, and we will compare two results a little bit later. Also, what you have here, if you see that your settings is too stiff, so you can go and decrease the level of steps to 0.02, for example, and here I can precisely adjust my magenta levels to get exactly the same look what I want. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's unnecessary, but in my case I really like to be precise. What is surprising for me, at least here with the automatic white balance, I have no problems with the picture, with the flower. And it's much easier to get to the real colors than the colors what I have from the scanner. So scanner get the colors, they are quite off, and the balance is strange, is offsetted, and it's almost impossible to hit the proper one. And this one, I think it's almost there without any problems. I can see that the color of the flower is red and the surrounding is warm, and it looks really nice. And now I can just export all the photos. It will take some time. As you can see here, I can also resize the images, but I want a full image here, and I will compare also both, and I need only JPEGs for that, so I will not edit them later. I will just export everything and compare the exports one to another. And for the next step of the comparison, I will use Negative Lab Pro in the Lightroom. So we need the 2 licenses. You need a license for the Lightroom and also a license for Negative Lab Pro. It's the latest version. I will start with the negatives with the no automatic density correction from the scanner. So it's basically dump of the TIFF files from the scanner, and we will see how it goes from there. So let's start with the settings of the Negative Lab Pro. As you can see, my version is 3.11. Here, I don't really have any advanced settings. I almost never use the batch conversion for that matter. I don't know why, but I just use it one by one. And this is how I get stuck basically with the using of the Negative Lab Pro. I use the TIFF scan mode. I prefer Frontier and usually pre-saturation to high. And I press convert and we will get result of the file in few seconds. And this is my standard usual settings, and I prefer automatic correction to neutral. And here, as you can see, we can reset everything to have more clean setup and start from there and try to balance it up a little bit and see what results I prefer more, from which conversion app I like it more. As you can see, the difference is subtle and you don't really have the difference like huge ones here. Only one advantage of the Negative Lab Pro, what you can see, is that I can change colors in the middles or in the shadows. And this feature is necessary, especially if you have a bad film quality and bad development. Sometimes you have a casts in the shadow and you need to correct them, and this feature I really like. White balance is quite nice and I don't see any differences here, but you also can get a little bit creative here, editing glow or removing glow, and do a lot of stuff with the curves. And you don't really see direct curves here, but these settings of darks and shadows and things like this, it's basically editing the curve. I prefer a little bit more flexibility to not go back and forward with the editing, and downside of this approach that it's a little bit longer. As you can see, I don't really have the quick buttons. Positive side of Negative Lab Pro, I have the presets, but presets give you sometimes the advantage in time and you can get the additional sharpness. But for this purpose of this video, I will just quickly convert each negative and try to balance it up and see if I even need to make a balancing with the Negative Lab Pro. So the whole point of the Negative Lab Pro, at least from the beginning, that you just convert and it's automatically balance up the colors, and we will see here if it works or not correctly, because sometimes it takes colors but not in a perfect way and you cannot really save the picture. And for example, this type of pictures sometimes have advantage in Negative Lab Pro because you can bump the contrast a lot, you can make the picture quite vibrant, and you can also take a lot of advantages from the curve and your picture will be more interesting than the picture before. So you going in a grounds of hard editing pictures and not really taking the picture how it is. And in this exact picture, Negative Lab Pro shines up. So I have the cast here, blue cast in the shadow, and I don't really like it. I can easily mask it up a little bit, trying to remove the color cast from the shadow and try to balance it up the picture. It's not so easy, but in the same time, it's only one unique advantage which you cannot do in a darkroom, and you can make a picture more interesting. And this is more art editing than the editing to balance it up the picture itself. It's, as I said, different purpose, but as you can see, it gives advantages. And for each instrument you have different tools and different settings and different types of approaches, and you get the final result looking a little bit different. And for example, some pictures on this strip, you can see they overexposed and it's not much things what you can do there. What I do with the scans, if I have borders, sometimes I just crop them roughly to the size and convert, because if you using Negative Lab Pro, you have option to border buffer. So I usually crop them and after that to make a conversion. And without any problems, it should just work perfectly well. And this scan is a scan from the camera, and we will compare the sharpnesses, we will compare a little bit of color back to back and different approaches what I have here and showed in this video. So now we're comparing two pictures, and these two pictures, they should be completely different, but in the same time, as you can see, they're not so different between each other. So the left picture here is a Plustek RAW, so it's just export from the scanner without any softwares. So you just get a scanner, and from scanner you directly get this picture. And if you tell me that it's not good picture, I'm not sure. And I can even see that this picture is more balanced than the picture what I have in the Negative Lab Pro. Here I have a cast and I just missed it because I was playing around with a big picture and try to balance up the big picture. And reds here I prefer more, but in reality they maybe looks more like that. And now let's compare the two pictures of flower. And here the difference is more noticeable. Here, as you remember, I try to make a lot of adjustments. But in general, the picture on the right, for some reason, looks more detailed, and especially here in the highlights, so it's not so blown up, and the picture itself quite balanced. And I surprised actually how good the direct scanning with the Plustek can be if you just edit it a little bit in the Photoshop later. So it's not so subtle difference that you need to pay additional money to get the scans. And in modern times, the scanner doesn't really cost a lot. And the last picture, what I want to compare is if this picture, which I printed in a darkroom, and I kind of know how it should look like. And here you can see that it's the same story. On the right picture, more balanced, it's more clean. For some reason, it's less contrast, and this is why you don't have here huge problems with the overcast contrast. And the play around in this picture can be quite easy in a Photoshop. So big question is why you need additional software in this case. When you compare one-to-one, they compare two pictures. And this realization for me quite new. I do not expect to get these results. And on the left one, you actually have the sharpening, additional sharpening, and I don't really see any benefits of this sharpening. And here I can see that I'm losing color details, and on this picture it's more neutral. I have less contrast and it looks amazingly sharp without any problems with the color. And this picture, especially zoomed in, looks more natural than the picture on the left. And on the left here on the picture, I have a camera. On the right, I have a scanner. Both of them converted with a Negative Lab Pro. You saw it just seconds ago. And let's try to check if we have any big differences. First of all, what I can see, the red looks a little bit different, but I don't think it's a problem of the scanner itself. It's just a problem of the conversion of colors. It picked up a little bit different. And honestly, I don't really see the difference in sharpness. I can see here that I have more dust than on the picture on the scanner. But even in the subtle details, when you resize it to the same size, I cannot really say the difference. But for example, here on the leaves with the scanner, I have higher detalization between the shadows and brights. And it probably just because of the light source in the scanner. But in general, the pictures for me looks more or less identical. So the scanner in my case wins because it doesn't require a lot of adjustments and you just straightforward scan and you have final picture. I probably can say that here in the highlights I have different detalization, but it's honestly not true because it's just different scanning in conversion in Negative Lab Pro. And we will try to see the same difference on the different types of methods of conversion. And now we will compare Negative Lab Pro scanner versus camera. And here I want to see the two different detalization. And the second one, if I have the more details in the highlights. And honestly, I don't see big differences here. It looks more or less identical, and the only difference in colors, and I have more dust for some reason here on the scanner, so it pick up even more details than on the photo scan. But here on the micro details in the corners, it's much sharper. It means that the flatness is much better and the lens is working better for the 35mm here. You can see the corners on the scanner looks twice better than on the scan with the camera. It's probably just because of the alignment. I'm not sure about that, but this is main reason why usually it happens. And as you also can see that the difference subtle, but it there that in the corners the bending of the geometry is twice bigger on the camera than on the scanner. So in my personal opinion, scanner wins without any doubts, and I will probably tend to scan with the scanner. And now let's see the comparison of the two main features which I want to select for my future workflow. I want to compare if I need additional useful and smart software which can help me to optimize and increase scanning speed. So basically I can scan in the same time and convert in the same time, or I can just stick with the Negative Lab Pro and make automatic conversions without any problems. Advantage of the using Lightroom, that I can remove the dust because I don't really have a dust correction, and I can work with the black and white and remove the dust there. But in the same time, I losing the ease of the conversion. So in these terms, if you prefer to scan more, if you have not like huge corrections, and if you have a camera, if you have automatic setup from the Filmomat, I think the Filmomat app is quite amazing. And the Negative Lab Pro for some reason underestimate the reds, and reds works worse here. I don't really see any huge color casts. Here is kind of a strange color. Here is more natural color, especially here on the building. In the highlights, it preserved the highlights in comparison to the Negative Lab Pro preset, what I'm used before. And for me, it's surprising that the colors of red looks more natural, like I want to see them from the Smartconvert. I don't know why it's that, but it's a subtle changes. They small, but they make sometimes huge differences. I tried my best, but here is a comparison of the NLP with the scanner, so with the Smartconvert with the scanner. And on some tricky situations, as here, you basically cannot rely only on the simple conversions, because the whole picture have a strange color casts, your shadows is off, your highs is off, you need a more complex mixture. But I don't think it's a purpose of the Negative Lab Pro also, and it's definitely not the purpose of Smartconvert. It's a post-processing and post-balancing of the picture, and it's much easier to solve this problem later. But also, here is a problem of the scanner, because if you pull up the scanner versus the camera and the two conversions, so the Smartconvert camera versus Negative Lab Pro scanner, and the Smartconvert camera works perfectly fine without any problems. So it's definitely just a problem of the initial raw file and not the problem of the Smartconvert app. And to finalize this comparison, I just want to compare two pictures, and for some reason the Smartconvert works a little bit better with the cameras, I think, than with the scanner. And you can see it clearly here that the camera gives you more balanced picture and it converts a little bit better, but in the same time I have more details from the scanner, and scanner works much better than the light source from the Intrepid camera enlarger. And here, this is your answer probably, that you can see that the details in the bricks here, and the bricks is a good example usually, then you can see the micro contrast, and especially on the corners of the frame, you're losing the whole details there and the geometry. These 2 points, and especially the points that you need to correct for the brightness, you also need to correct the fall off from the lens, and you're losing the details, you're losing the contrast, and only one difference is the color. Makes huge difference. And now let's make a funny comparison of the Smartconvert with the Plustek RAW, basically just dumping the JPEGs from the scanner. And as you can see, I have the doubts that I even need any type of software, because here I have all the details, the color balance looks nice, maybe even nicer than the Smartconvert, because I don't really have a blue cast here. Maybe it's a little bit too much in terms of the magenta here. Maybe it's too warm, but also the scenery was warm, so it's inconclusive, and I get just confused looking at these two pictures and reevaluating my decisions in my life and why I spent so much time editing my photos. And it's just much better to just have an initial raw file, so basically negative, exposed properly, and after that everything is easy, so you have no problems with any type of conversions. So I think I will end up the video, so I think I will end up the comparison on this point. So what I can say, that the Filmomat app, really great. It's really amazing fast app. It works really nice. On the version 3.2, you have a basic functions which amazingly works without any problems. The app is fast, it opens the files fast, it makes conversions really fast. You don't need a Adobe license to anything. You have direct access to your converted images. You straightforward see the images. Additionally, you have the functions which I'm not covered in this review, the functions of the infrared removing of the dust, which Lucas also working for as new plugin there. And this whole combination of the features, it's basically the future how you can scan in automatic mode. Because as you remember, noise from my scanner, it's quite slow, and additionally it's quite slow, plus it's create a noise. And yes, it's a good scanner, it's a little bit outdated technology, so it's not USB-C even, and I think the new Plustek 135i also not USB-C, and the speed of transfer is limited there, so it's a little bit outdated technology, so you need to keep it in mind. But overall, I have really pleasant experience that on the market at the moment. I have so many options how I can do my work and how I can select the path. And after this whole comparison, I think I will just stick with the normal type of the processing which I used years before I have an enlarger. And I think with the enlarger, with the halogen lamp, I still have the better results than with a scanner, but unfortunately I don't have an enlarger anymore, and the scanner is the second best option in terms of quality. So I will use the Plustek scanner, and I will use the Smartconvert app to fastly convert it from the hot folder, and I will save the JPEGs to export, and this will be my new type of setup on the go for the scanning of the negatives. That's it for today. I hope the video was helpful to you to actually select your proper method, find a different app, different software. And thank you everyone who support my channel, and subscribe. I have more news for you in future. Stay tuned, and I already have the next video for you on my channel. So see you under the safe light.